Alright, so here we are. This is part 2 here. Just continuing our discussion about deck building. So we've kind of gone over the base concepts of what we put in a deck. I've got my little cheat sheet over here because there's so much to go over for this. And we've kind of gone over a bunch of the staples. So now we need to talk about tech. Okay, and what tech is anytime you're going to build a deck, and it doesn't matter if it's Crystal Beasts, Glad Beasts, Inzectors, Wind-Ups, Volcanics, Dark Scorpions, Ojamas, Lightsworn, anything, okay? You're going to be looking at what your core monster lineup is, and then immediately after you look at that core monster lineup, you're going to need to look at, okay, I have my staples, I have my core monsters, core spells and traps for those monsters, and then I'm looking for tech. And so we're going to just talk about a couple of tech cards real quick, because it's a lot easier to get into than trying to go, hey, here's how you pick out your monsters. So I have the deck that I've kind of been pulling all this stuff out of is my Inzector deck. So like, because I'm playing lots of dark monsters, for example, I'm teching, this is considered tech, Allure of Darkness. This is, it wouldn't be useful if you were playing Lightsworn. Works great in dark decks. Gives you a little bit more speed. That adds back to that speed concept that we were talking about. As far as tuners, I really still enjoy Synchro Summoning. I like Synchro Monsters. So I run a couple of other ones. I run Plague Spreader and Gen X Ally Birdman. These are both very, very good tuners. Gen X Ally Birdman gives you the ability to bounce a monster that's on the field back to your hand in order to special summon. And Plague Spreader can come back from the graveyard, which just makes it much more versatile. Also, because I'm running a lot of dark monsters and I'm bringing stuff out of my graveyard constantly, I run a Dark Dragon. Because it's very easy for me to control the number of dark monsters in my graveyard. This is all tech. These aren't cards that just go in any deck. A lot of people think they are because they see a lot of players run them, but they don't. These are considered tech cards. Now, I got right here, this is the rest of my Inzector deck, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 cards in here that I consider the core of the Inzector deck. That includes my Dragonflies, my Centipedes, my Hornets, my Ladybugs, my Gigamantis, my Swords, all that stuff. All goes into this core concept. My monster lineup is going to be anywhere from 19 to 23 monsters. Okay, that's a general thing. Once again, as I said before, every one of these rules can be broken at different times. But if you're just getting started and trying to keep your monster lineup, trying to build a deck that's going to be competitive, this is a good place to start. Make sure that you don't have too many monsters, so try to keep your monster count in between 19 and 23. Okay. Next, you're going to want to look at your spell lineup. Now, there's a lot of really good spells out there, and spells actually constantly come into play with our monsters, so we want to look at, what spells are going to help our monsters. If you're playing Crystal Beast deck, for example, you're going to play cards like Crystal Abundance, Crystal Beacon. If you're playing a Elemental Hero deck, you're going to want to have your Miracle Fusions. You're going to want to have your emergency calls. If you're playing Inzectors, you're going to want to make sure that you have things like your Inzector Swords, Zeta Calibers. Lots, every different archetype is going to have a different option, and so is every different kind of type. And what I mean by that is, if you're doing a warrior build, if you're doing an insect build, if you're building a spellcaster deck, dragon deck, those kind of things. All of these decks have cards that go into them with our spells. We don't want to get too heavy on the spells because the spells usually are worked in conjunction with the monsters that we have out. So if we haven't drawn those monsters, haven't been able to put monsters on the field, those spell cards might not be as useful to us. We want to kind of limit ourselves. I like to run anywhere between 10 to 13 spell cards, and it really depends on how many monsters I run and what trap cards I want to run. In trap lineup, I try to keep my trap lineup right around, 8 cards. Sometimes it dips as low as 5 or can go up to as many as 10. But I try to keep my trap lineup at 8 cards because there are so many ways to stop trap cards that are just easy and that a lot of players still use, the main one being Royal Decree. tons and tons and tons of players are side decking Royal Decrees, and if they see you have a lot of trap cards in your deck, they'll side in the Royal Decrees to stop you. Same thing on the can be said with Jinzo. Jinzo's still a pretty good card and can stop trap cards. The disadvantage to Jinzo is, most people know this, Solemn Warning, Solemn Judgment, negate Jinzo. They actually do stop Jinzo, and they can put him back in the graveyard. So now that we've kind of broken down the different elements of the deck, we've looked at how many, number-wise we should put into our deck. Now we're going to go into the monsters a little bit. This is where it gets a little complicated, because I don't know what you at home are going to be trying to build. Every deck is going to be different, but when you start to build a deck, you're going to start to notice that a couple of core concepts come into play, and there's usually one or two monsters that are key, essential for whatever you want to do. Some examples. If you're building a Crystal Beast deck, I really love my Crystal Beast deck. It's actually the reason the show is named Crystal Cards, because after the Crystal Beasts. Sapphire Pegasus is an essential. He's the main speed, he's the main guy who's going to find your cards for you, so you want to run 3. This is to maximize your efficiency and maximize the amount of combos you're going to be able to pull off first and second turn. In the same way, Crystal Beast Ruby Carbuncle is very, very important, but I don't want to pull him every turn, so I'm only going to run 2 copies of him. Okay? Got the Inzektor deck right here. I gotta have my 3 copies of Inzektor Dragonfly. I gotta have my 3 copies of Inzektor Centipede. These are essentials to the combos that I'm gonna want to loop out on. And every single deck, archetype that's out there has these combos, and some of them are easier to get to, some of them are harder to get to, but you really need to take the time to look at whatever deck that you want to build and go, okay, this is the combo, or these are the set of combos that I want to be trying to get off every single turn. Okay? Now, if you are trying to build an alternate win condition deck, you're going to be looking at speed. We talked about the speed already, but you're also going to want to look at stall. Okay, and I don't care if you're trying to do Final Countdown. I don't care if you're trying to draw Exodia. I don't care if you're trying to win via Venomenaga, which, by the way, I got a message on that today. I can't wait to work on that one. That one's coming. I promise you that. But all these different alternate win conditions are going to require you to be able to stave off your opponent until you make the situation right. If you're playing Final Countdown, you need to be able to stave off your opponent long enough to draw the countdown and play it, and then to be able to fend off their attacks and affect damage long enough for those 20 turns to run out so that you win. If you're playing Exodia, you need to be able to draw fast, so the speed is essential, but you also need to be able to stop those attacks, because most people can't draw Exodia first turn, and if you could, then we'd probably see a lot more Exodia decks being played. With burn decks, you see essentially the same 2 concepts being needed. You need your speed element that's going to be getting to these cards that are going to be dealing the effect damage, and then you're going to need a certain level of stall to be able to fend off your opponent. Burn decks are still fairly effective. The main reason for this is a lot of people don't see the burn decks coming and don't have a side deck prepared for burn decks. That's why we see a lot of chain burn that'll still pop up at random throughout tournaments and be successful, and that also benefited from the cards like Card D. So lastly, when you're building your deck, you need to go, okay, so I have all these cards that I'm using now. I've got my main deck that I've worked on, and every main deck is going to require some play test. Don't think just because you built a deck and you followed, guidelines like from this video, for example, that you're going to automatically win. You're going to need to figure out your combos and get used to using them. You're going to have to learn what situations are best for certain combos, and you're going to find that some of your ideas probably didn't pan out. I've had tons and tons and tons of ideas that they were really great in my head, but once I put them into a deck and started doing them in practice, they weren't coming up as frequently as I thought they were. They weren't as effective as I thought they were. A really good example of this is for just my Inzektor deck, Beatron. worked great in initial playtests, and then I went and started using it in tournaments, and the effect just didn't come up as often. I started off with 2. I've gone down to 1 because 1 is about all the opportunity I see effectiveness for it. So you got you're going to need to play test, but you're also going to need to look at your extra deck and your side deck. And your extra deck, it's really important when you're building your deck and putting together your extra deck that you don't just go, oh, I have to have 15 monsters in there between Fusion, Xyz, and Synchro. It's really important to look at it and go, I can actually summon all of these monsters and make that extra deck of yours a toolbox. And if you've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh long enough, like Warrior Toolbox used to be a very popular deck because you could go and search out anything. That's part of the reason I love Insectus, because I can go and search out pretty much anything. Glad Beast, you can go and search out anything. All that idea needs to go into your extra deck. You got your Stardust Dragon for negation of destruction. Maybe you run Acid Golem of Destruction because you want that little bit of extra attack power. Leviair the Sea Dragon to bring back your remove from play monsters. I have so many different ideas that I try and put into my extra deck so that in any situation that comes up, I have that extra deck that I can pull and go, okay, in this obscure situation, this works. I also am trying to use that extra deck space for everyday duels, so it's important to make sure those extra deck monsters can be brought out by pretty much anything, because you never know the situation you're going to be putting yourself into. Maybe you're going to need to Monster Reborn your opponent's monster in order to overlay or to Synchro, and if the monsters in your extra deck require dragons or require warriors or something, and you don't have that ability, that's one less option that's available to you. And that's why cards like Stardust Dragon, which doesn't require anything specific, it's just any 8 stars, or Leviair the Sea Dragon, which I just mentioned, any 2 level 3s can make that rank 3 there. That's why these cards are really, really good, is because you can get to them in any deck, and that makes them much more versatile, and versatility is going to always be a key. So I hope this has helped out in your deck building, and then I really want to encourage you to, if you have questions about a specific deck, to write or comment on these videos. I really want to help, but I hope this helps you in just your generic deck building out there. Make sure to check us out next week, because next week we're going to be talking to John. I said last week it was a Laval Lightsworn deck. I got an email from him saying, you misquoted, it's Flamebell. So apparently it's a Flamebell deck. Either way, I'm really looking forward to it, because I've seen a bunch of John's videos. He claims to be the best damn thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I have a hard time disputing that, because his decks are cool. So I'm really looking forward to talking to him. Also, just want to send a shout out, Chris Collier, you're the man. Thank you for hooking me up with that Tier Star foil. I can't wait to get it. Last, just please share and subscribe, post your comments, give me all the feedback you can, because this is really my way of just kind of giving back to the Yu-Gi community. So until next time, this is Brian Mead, Crystal Cards. Peace out, guys.